if we look at the breaches that are happening, still social engineering, misconfigurations, vulnerabilities, and patching. So whether we're in a new normal or not, a pandemic or not, the threats are going to continue to increase, but not necessarily directly based on where we're working from. We're seeing a lot of, or all the threat actors, they're not deploying ransomware the moment they compromise a network. They're spending 30 to 130 days on your network doing recon. And I read articles where they tried to launch Mega Upload, but the whitelisting app blocked it. However, they were able to find out that the company used FileZilla. So leveraging existing applications, how do you know that that PowerShell command is a valid one or a bad one? So we need to continue to define layers, increase your cyber hygiene to determine these new attack vectors, and how to validate what is normal behavior and what is the bad behavior that's going on in our network. I think that is something definitely to highlight right now, is living off the land.
Things that keep you up awake at night is the things that you can't necessarily control, whether it's social engineering, the email that gets slipped through your system that someone clicks on doesn't follow what they should. Other things like all of a sudden the latest, Microsoft 0-day vulnerability comes out, and you do everything proper, which is you consistently update and patch and everything else. You come across where you have this that no one could prepare for, and it's been around for months. Continually adding to the complexity is people working remote, monitoring your network, and how can you filter through all of the mass amounts of information that can come in, and because after a while it's information overload. Increasing your security budget would be a normal thing, but when you're totally closed down, it's a hard case to sell, but there's no price on security, right? But it's a harder challenge when you don't have revenue.
We live in such a connected world, and with the current pandemic, so many companies have moved to remote work. This isn't the normal. A lot of companies weren't prepared for this. And this has increased the surface for attackers to leverage. When working from home, there are increased risks due to working from an insecure location and a higher chance of conducting business on non-corporate assets. When an employee is working at home with their corporate laptop, that laptop can be accessed from each of the other endpoints at home. Let's say their child or their spouse's personal laptop, a home router, or personal internet connection, which is all running kind of very weak consumer software, is compromised. It makes it way easier for an attacker to get in and infect laterally into a corporate laptop, right? So not only do companies now have more levers that the attackers can pull to get in, but we also have an increased risk of ransomware due to the phishing, due to the stuff that kind of Daron was talking about around those kind of phishing attacks. Now, that creates limited visibility. And further limited visibility happens due to the inability to see the websites that employees are browsing or downloading from, harder to push patches, BYOD devices, limited ability to harden, and millions of fraudulent sign-ins per day from new cloud services. This creates a reliable surface for the adversary to get in. So when we talk about ransomware, it's increasingly moving towards extortion of victims' data, not only by encrypting it, but publicly using it. So this gives rise to a new form that's happening, now known as double extortion ransomware. What we've seen in the market is that it's no longer one and done quick deployment tactics. It's now long cycle, months, not weeks, tactics, such as spreading and capturing files before detonation. So an interesting point to be made here is that once the attackers have the data they think is valuable, they then encrypt those endpoints as in a traditional ransomware attack. Then at some point down the road, no matter if the first ransom is paid or not, they will then hit the victim up by telling them that they have their files and will leak it if a second or periodical ransom is not paid. So in some small cases here, we believe that it'll actually start happening more often. Attackers are even turning on laptop cameras and microphones to take a recording of at-home conversations or meetings from execs. This way, when they start extorting by saying they will release the exfiltrated information, they will also be able to release that recording. This is creating a way higher risk to operations and creating immediate business disruption compared to the traditional ransomware attacks that we saw before the new normal.
We always talk about 1 year revenue divided by 365, that's the cost of a day of loss. but the loss of future opportunities, the loss of a contract. We're a project business. We fill buildings. And if we're not on time, there's covenants. There's a huge covenant if people can't go and sit in their offices, right? So there's payments there. So it could go very, very high depending on the time that the breach is. So I think every company has its own metric, but just to do that simple math of annual revenue divided by 365 is enough to scare you at that point. I also think that within your industry, you're going to lose face as well, right? Because like we sell to Global 2000 clients, majority. And they rank our privacy and security, and they can choose to go elsewhere as well. So that them walking because they can't get their stuff, or the fact that potentially we released their data with a breach. Look how upset we all get when Life Labs here in Canada lost our data. I mean that bothers me. That's my personal data, right? So companies are really starting to get that way.
The cost of something like that happening is substantially dependent on your posture and how you have distributed your IT platform. How are you leveraging cloud-based solutions or not? How have you gathered your data strategy and everything that is distributed? So all of that in perspective, I think the downtime is something that is really dependent on your situation. From the perspective of reputational damage, and from the perspective of preventing mistrust, it is important to be prepared how you want to communicate, engage the right partners in creating that posture, assessing your situation, and being able to respond and put the right safeguards in place and periodically check in, because things keeps changing. As Daniel was saying, they're getting smarter and smarter. And so we need to make sure that we actually really engage the right experts to ensure we're up in our games in this world.